All right, hey everybody, it's Mort again, back with a 10.1b patch rundown. This is a very small patch. As we mentioned, other than the holiday, we're trying not to do B patches unless the meta is in sort of a rough shape. But right now, we do feel the meta is in a bit of a rough shape. There are two comps in particular that are kind of dominating the meta. Basically, Sivir and Friends, where you run some variation of Sivir or Azir as carry, and the husband and wife combo, Light. Those are kind of dominating pretty much right now. So we're going to be doing three small changes that we hope to breathe some more life into the meta and open up some more comps into being viable. So let's go over those. So first one, as I mentioned, is Sivir. And one of the hardest things about being a game designer, as opposed to say QA, is problem identification is the first part, right? Like we know the Sivir and Friends comp is too powerful. So the solution generation here is what's the challenge. How do we bring Sivir down in a way that doesn't ruin Sivir, doesn't ruin the fantasy of Blade Master, things like that? Because there are a lot of things that we could do to just kind of neuter her, but we wanted to find something that made a lot of sense. Originally, we were going to attack how many times she ricocheted, but again, that's kind of the fun of the character. So we looked really hard, and eventually we ended up finding something. And what we noticed was everyone was building Hurricane on her. And we were trying to figure out, well, why? Why is everybody building Hurricane? And at first, people were saying it was for Blade Master procs. Well, we checked. It doesn't proc Blade Master. We're like, okay, so what's actually going on? Well, what we noticed was Hurricane Bolt during the Ricochet spell was actually creating another Ricochet. So while Sivir's spell says 10 bounces, if you have Hurricane, you're essentially getting 20 bounces. And so we noticed that anything that could proc on hits was proccing Ricochet. So the worst scenario of this actually looks something like this, where if Sivir has Berserker, her first boomerang cleaves, the cleave hits 3 targets, and then each one of those cleaves can proc on hits, which means more ricochets, and this gets pretty bananas. This is a pretty impractical situation, but it kind of goes beyond what we ever wanted the spell to do. We did not intend for Ricochet to come out of Hurricane Bolts or Berserker procs or things like that. And so this was a good area to bring down power, since pretty much everyone who's playing the character right now is building Hurricane. So this will be a pretty substantial nerf. So Sivir Ricochet no longer procs off Hurricane Bolts or Berserker procs. Now, you might be wondering, why not touch Azir? Because Azir is the other one that often ends up being a carry. Azir doesn't usually blow up the entire team quite so much as Sivir does. Azir also does magic damage, which means you can do Mystic as a counter option. Whereas Sivir's damage is mostly physical, which means you should be building something like Wardens, except she's also Desert, which means you can't really do that as much. So Sivir was definitely where some of the uncounterable strength of the comp is. We feel like this change will bring it down. That being said, it's possible it doesn't bring it down enough. It's possible people go, okay, instead of Hurricane, I build Infinity Edge, Sivir, and I win just as much. That is a possibility. We do have some more changes lined up for 10.2, but this was a good start. We think this brings down her power pretty substantially. Next up is Yorick. Yorick is a 4-cost unit that honestly feels like a 5-cost unit. He's felt like that for a while, to be honest. I originally had some nerfs all the way back in 923 that I ended up pulling. He's always been on the cusp of slightly overpowered. Right now, he's at a point, though, where you will literally put him in any comp. You could be running Sivir and Friends, bring the Yorick. You can be running Rangers, bring the Yorick. It really doesn't matter. Yorick is really good. A single cast of his spell will give you 3 ghouls. And that's 3,000 HP, which is a ton. So yeah, he's just offering a lot of power. People are also getting really smart and putting GA on him, which often lets him get 2 casts off. The ghouls also hit like a truck. This is also doing a weird thing where it's making light weaker, believe it or not. And what I mean by that is typically if you're trying to go light, you need the Yorick to make your comp work well. But since everyone else is taking Yorick because he's so powerful, that puts light in kind of a bad situation. So we're going to be bringing down Yorick's power. specifically around the ghouls, because we do like the fantasy of Yorick being a summoner, summoning a lot of ghouls. Those ghouls probably just shouldn't be as big as they are. So at 2-star, this is a 20% nerf to the ghouls' HP. So that's quite a bit less power. And the AD at 2-star is also going down slightly, so they're not going to hit as hard. Again, this is a Yorick nerf. He'll still be a powerful unit, but this brings him down a little more in line to not quite be as crazy. His ghouls aren't more powerful than like 2-star 2-cost units at this point. So yeah, this should be a good nerf. Lastly is Lucian. And it's interesting because Light is in a really good spot, as we mentioned. Specifically, there's a couple variations out there. There's the Light with Lucian Senna, with Senna Bait, with the GA. There's also Light Lunar that's going around that uses Lucian, but not the Senna, which is pretty interesting, which definitely kind of reaffirms that if we're going to hit anything, it's Lucian. Now, you might be going, well, gee, you just buffed a bunch of stuff in the last patch. Of course Light is good. Well, actually, the Light comp itself without Lucian is probably in a good state. It is specifically Lucian that is scaling way too well with Light. And in particular, I will say I underestimated how well this comp would emerge without the Assassin Nocturne going around killing everything. With Nocturne leaving the meta, it covered up a lot of their weaknesses. So Lucian and Senna were able to come out and do a lot more damage. And again, we like where Light is for non-Lucian comps, not so much for Lucian. So what we're doing is we're actually hitting the way his spell scales with attack speed. So what this means is at the start of a fight, Lucian's not going to be that much weaker. He's probably going to be about 8% weaker, because I think the total shots is going from like 16 to 13 with no attack speed buff. So that's not a big deal. But at the end of a fight, when your 6 Light units have died and he's received 5 stacks of 35% attack speed, that's close to, what, 70, 140, 175 attack speed. He's going to be getting half as much benefit from that. So that can be as big as like a 30, 40% nerf, 50 in some cases, and 9 Light cases. And what this means is when you get down to that final moment where it's just the Senna who's rezzing with GA and the Lucian clearing the backline or everything, instead of killing 8 units, he's only going to have the power to kill like 3 or 4. So this should get Lucian in a healthier state, I think. Should still be totally viable. He's still going to be very strong. He's just not going to scale to one ult kills your entire team kind of strong. So, yeah. Again, B patches are meant to be small now. These are 3 changes we think will open up the meta. I'm sure Berserkers will still be in a pretty good spot. I honestly think Blademaster Azir will do just fine. Blademaster Sivir will be pretty good. Hopefully maybe some Rangers can start to emerge. But yeah, so this is going to do it for now. And then next week we have 10.2, which has a lot more changes that should open up things as well. So stay tuned on Sunday. If you catch the stream, you can check that out. But yeah, and also those changes are on PBE if you want to try them out. So, all right, that's going to do it for me. Again, hopefully this B patch opens up the meta. Hopefully you guys are having fun, and hopefully this makes the game even more fun. As always, thank you for playing. We'll catch you next time.